What if the most real relationship on Married with Children had nothing to do with what was written in the script? What if the man who played Al Bundy, the cheapest, laziest, most self-absorbed TV dad in sitcom history, turned out to be one of the most quietly decent human beings Hollywood ever produced? And what if it took nearly 4 decades, a devastating medical diagnosis, and one of the most emotional moments in Emmy history for the full truth to finally come out? Christina Applegate has started talking, and what she is saying is not what anyone expected. The story of Christina Applegate and Ed O'Neill is the story that Married with Children never showed you. Once you hear it, you will never watch a single episode the same way again. When Christina Applegate first stepped onto the set of Married with Children in 1987, she was 15 years old. Not a young adult, not almost 16, 15. A teenage girl walking into one of the most deliberately provocative productions in the history of network television. The show was built on edge. It pushed the limits of what censors would allow, and placed its characters in situations designed to make audiences squirm in the most entertaining way possible. Right in the center of all that was Kelly Bundy, a character written as a teenage sex symbol. The jokes were suggestive from the very first season. The outfits were revealing by design. The attention that came with playing that character could have pointed in very dangerous directions for someone so young. Ed O'Neill was in his early 40s when the show began. He had worked enough years in the industry to understand exactly what it could do to young performers thrust suddenly into the spotlight without anyone watching out for them. Hollywood had a long and ugly history of failing young people in precisely that way, and Ed decided it was not going to happen on his set. What he did was not announced. There was no meeting where he declared himself Christina's protector. It happened quietly, practically, and consistently. Ed would step in when conversations on set drifted somewhere they should not go around a teenager. He would position himself near Christina during difficult scenes. He would redirect when redirecting was needed, and shut things down completely when they needed to be shut down. Crew members who worked those sets for years would see him check on her between takes. Notice the way he quietly inserted himself when something felt off. There are stories about him driving her home after late-night shoots because he did not want her traveling alone. Stories about him calling her mother to reassure her that her daughter was in a safe environment. Stories about him standing up to producers when they pushed for things that made Christina uncomfortable. None of this was in his contract. It was a choice every single time. Christina spent 11 years on that set. She arrived at 15 and left at 26. Those are the exact years during which a person figures out who they are. Having Ed O'Neill present through every single one of those years, functioning as a genuine anchor, is not a small thing. She has said as much herself. She has talked about how his presence during those years fundamentally changed who she became as an adult, not because he made her into something, but because he made sure the environment around her was safe enough for her to become herself. In 1989, Married with Children came closer to being canceled than most fans ever realized. A woman named Terry Rakolta from Michigan watched an episode called Her Cups Runneth Over and launched a full-scale advertiser boycott. She contacted major corporations directly, appeared on national news programs, and organized effectively enough that the campaign worked, at least at first. Coca-Cola pulled their advertising. McDonald's withdrew. Dozens of other major brands followed. Network executives were having emergency meetings, and genuine conversations were happening about ending the show immediately. For Christina, who was 17 at the time, This was not an abstract industry problem. This was her entire career on the line, and the uncertainty was overwhelming. What Ed O'Neill did during that crisis reveals everything about his character. He did not panic. He did not start calculating how to protect his own position. He sat down with Christina and David Faustino, who played her brother Bud, and he talked to them the way a father talks to his children during something frightening. He told them that no matter what happened with the network's decision, they had created something real and meaningful together. He told them to be proud of what they had built. He also went further. He contacted the press himself. He gave interviews defending the show, but more pointedly, defending the young people who worked on it. He made sure that in every public conversation about the controversy, someone was speaking up specifically for the teenagers whose careers were caught in the middle of a culture war they had not started. The boycott ultimately collapsed under the weight of its own attention. All the controversy made people curious about what the fuss was actually about, and ratings went up significantly. What was intended as a death blow turned into one of the most dramatic free advertising campaigns in television history. The show survived. It emerged stronger than ever. But Christina has been clear about what she actually carries from that period, not the victory. What she carries is the memory of Ed standing steady beside her when everything seemed to be falling apart. He showed her, through direct example, what it looks like to face a crisis with composure rather than fear. The cast wore that boycott like a badge of honor. They had been tested as a unit and come through it together. That experience bonded them in ways that audiences watching at home could never fully appreciate. The bond being forged was between the real people underneath the characters, and it proved far more durable than the show itself. When Married with Children ended in 1997, it did not end with a proper goodbye. There was no finale episode designed to give closure, no celebration of what 11 seasons had meant, no ceremony. The show was canceled, the production wrapped, and that was that. One day they were filming new episodes together. The next day they were not. 11 years of working together, almost every single day. Birthdays celebrated on set, holidays shared. Ed had watched Christina go from a teenager figuring out who she was into a fully formed performer with real creative authority. And then the set was dismantled and everyone scattered. Christina's talked about how disorienting that period was. You go from having this entire world, a routine, a place to be every morning, people who know you better than almost anyone, and then overnight it simply stops existing. There is no graduation. There is no recognition of what was built. Hollywood moves on to whatever comes next, and you are left trying to grieve something the industry does not even recognize as worth grieving. That experience bonded the cast in ways audiences never fully understood. They had faced potential destruction during the boycott years. They had built something that lasted over a decade, and they had come out the other side stronger. But there was still no real ending, and the absence of that ending stayed with all of them. What Christina has revealed is that she and Ed never actually separated, even when the show ended. Phone calls, meals, Ed checking in on her career, offering advice when she asked, and quiet support when she did not. The TV father and TV daughter had become something that did not require a set or a script to sustain itself. Christina went on to build a strong career in films and television after the show. Awards, critical recognition, and projects that showed a range far beyond Kelly Bundy. Through all of it, Ed was paying attention. He was proud of her, in the specific way a parent is proud, not because he claimed credit, but because he had been present long enough to see the whole arc of her becoming. Ed's post-Bundy career was extraordinary in its own right. Modern Family made him even more recognized than Married with Children had. He won awards and ran for 11 more successful seasons. But in interviews, when people asked about genuine highlights, he kept returning to watching Christina grow into who she became. Married with Children was not a rigidly scripted production. The cast had room to improvise, to experiment, to find what worked in real time. Ed's theater background made him exceptionally skilled in that space, and he used that skill not just for his own performance, but as a tool to teach his younger co-stars. He would throw unexpected line changes at Christina mid-scene and alter his delivery to force her to respond authentically rather than executing a rehearsed reaction. These were deliberate teaching moments disguised as normal set behavior. He was investing in her future as a performer without ever calling it that. Christina has talked about how those lessons shaped her instincts as an actress. The ability to stay present in a scene, to listen genuinely rather than waiting for your cue, to find the real emotional truth of a moment when things go sideways. Those skills came partly from 11 years beside someone who was consistently, quietly pushing her to be better. The atmosphere Ed helped maintain on set was also part of the legacy. The show pushed hard against acceptable content, but Ed made clear that the character's behavior was one thing, and the treatment of the actual people on set was something else entirely. Inappropriate behavior was shut down immediately. That standard came from the center of the production and trickled through everyone involved. There were smaller things too. Ed bringing Christina coffee when she looked exhausted. Katie Segal offering guidance about navigating the pressures that young women face in this industry. David Faustino going through adolescence at almost the same time Christina was, becoming something genuinely like a real brother to her. Two teenagers in an adult world figuring it out together. The show ran for 11 seasons. That is an extraordinary achievement. The writing was good and the concept was sharp, but neither fully explains that kind of sustained success. What explains it is that the people on that set were genuinely invested in each other. The chemistry that came through the screen was not manufactured. It was a reflection of actual relationships built through years of real shared experience. On August 10th, 2021, Christina Applegate posted something on social media that landed like a shockwave. She had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. The disease had been discovered while she was filming the final season of her Netflix series, Dead to Me. In a single moment, the entire shape of her future shifted into something unrecognizable. Multiple sclerosis is a chronic disease affecting the central nervous system with no cure. It can affect mobility, balance, vision, and cognitive function in ways that fluctuate unpredictably. For Christina, the practical realities were immediate. She now uses a cane. She has spoken honestly about cognitive fog that makes certain tasks difficult. She has had to restructure her daily life from the foundation up. The emotional impact has been just as significant. Christina has been remarkably honest about that, talking openly about grief for the version of her life she thought she was going to have, about mourning a future she had already half built in her imagination, about the anger and the fear and the particular strangeness of having to grieve while still fully living. Ed O'Neill's response was immediate and substantive. He did not send a brief message and leave it at that. He made sure Christina knew with clarity that he was present for her. His support went well beyond what former co-workers typically offer. The entire Married with Children cast rallied around her. Katie Sagal was vocal and consistent. David Faustino reached out. Amanda Bierce showed her solidarity. The family that had formed on that soundstage proved it had always been something more than a production. But it was Ed's response that meant the most. After nearly 4 decades, he was still the same person he had been in 1987, the one who looked around and identified who needed someone watching out for them, and then quietly became that person without being asked. Still a protector, still a father figure, still showing up when it mattered most. The standing ovation that nobody will forget. In November 2022, Christina made her first significant public appearance since the diagnosis, receiving a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Just showing up required courage that most people would not have been able to summon. She arrived with her cane, moving more slowly than before, but she was there. Katie Sagal was in the crowd. Friends and colleagues had come from across the industry. What Christina said during that ceremony was not softened or carefully managed. She talked about her diagnosis openly. She talked about fear. She talked about what it meant to have people in her life who actually showed up when things got hard. Her voice cracked. She kept talking anyway. Then came January 2023 and the Emmy Awards. Christina walked onto that stage with her cane, and the room did something no one had scripted. Every single person stood up. The applause started and did not stop. It lasted nearly a full minute, wave after wave of it. The room would not sit down. Standing on that stage, surrounded by that outpouring, Christina was visibly overwhelmed. And then she did the thing that is quintessentially her. She reached for the joke. She noted that all the shaking was affecting her brain. The audience laughed through whatever they had been feeling. She had managed, in one line, to be simultaneously heartbreaking and hilarious, which is as perfect a distillation of her talent as you will ever see. Comments from fans watching at home captured something real. One wrote, "Amazing. Relationships like that are truly hard to find." Another, "Nice to hear a good story come out of Hollywood." Another simply, "Thank you, Ed, for looking after her. Thank you." People responded to this story the way they did because it reminded them what genuine human decency actually looks like and how rare it is. Ed was among those who made sure Christina knew she was not alone that evening. Their exchanges remained private, but the dynamic that had defined their relationship since 1987 was unchanged, still looking out for her. The TV father had always been a real one. The question that has followed this cast for years is whether Married with Children will ever have a proper reunion. Christina's diagnosis made a traditional revival complicated, but rather than retreating, she found new ways to connect with her audience on her own terms. She launched a podcast called Messy alongside actress Jamie Lynn Sigler, who also lives with MS. The format suited her current reality. No long hours on a soundstage, no physical demands she cannot meet. Just honest conversation with someone who understands her experience. That creative adaptation pointed toward a larger possibility. A reunion does not have to look like a traditional sitcom revival. Documentaries, limited specials, podcast crossovers, formats that did not exist in 1997 have opened up real options. Every time the cast gets together, The chemistry is immediately evident. Whatever time has done to Hollywood, it has not touched what exists between these specific people. Ed O'Neill has been consistent on the subject, willing, but not without Christina. The same position has been echoed by the rest of the cast. The Bundy family is a complete unit, or it is nothing. Conversations with networks and streaming platforms have reportedly happened, and the appetite from fans remains as strong as ever. Strip away the television history and the industry milestones, and what you are left with is something simple. A man looked at a 15-year-old girl stepping into a difficult situation, and he decided, without being required to, without anyone asking him to, that he was going to look out for her. He did that every day for 11 years on a television set. He did it during a boycott crisis that threatened to destroy their careers. He did it after the show ended and the professional reasons to stay connected had disappeared. And he did it again, decades later, when she called with news that would have been devastating to receive alone. That is the story Christina Applegate has been telling in pieces for years, and is now finally able to tell fully. Not because anything dramatic happened, not because a secret was exposed or a conflict came to light, but because enough time has passed for her to look back at the full arc of it and understand what it actually meant. The Bundys might have spent every episode trying to escape each other. The people who played them spent 37 years choosing, again and again, to stay close. That is the ending the show never gave them. And in some ways, it is a better one than anything a writer's room could have put together. Christina Applegate is still here, still funny, still honest, still facing everything that comes at her with the combination of courage and humor that has defined her for 4 decades. And Ed O'Neill is still watching, still proud, still the same person he chose to be on a soundstage in 1987 when a 15-year-old girl walked in and needed someone to look out for her. Some bonds are just unbreakable. This one always was.